he could kill another human by just spitting at him. His breath, sweat, spittle, semen, and everything else were deadly. And any woman unfortunate enough to sleep with him ended up dead in a few hours. Yes, such a man actually existed. If we are to believe the records, he was poisonous, and so was his sperm. And any woman unfortunate enough to sleep with him ended up dead in a few hours because of his deadly juice. But how can a man be poisonous? Who was he? His name was Sultan Mahmud Shah Begarha. He was the ruler of the Gujarat Sultanate during the Muzaffarid dynasty, which lasted from 1391 to 1593. According to legend or history, since both have a dirty habit of coinciding, especially in Indian history, Gujarat's Sultan Mahmud Begarha was so poisonous he could kill another human by just spitting at him. His breath, sweat, spittle, semen, and everything else were deadly. So when the Sultan would take his shirt off after wearing it, no one would even touch his shirts because they were said to have been poisoned from his sweat. How and why did he become poisonous? Was he born that way or did he mutate? Let's see. First look at him and you should be sufficiently warned that the Sultan was a little different. He was a really tall, gigantic man. He had a long beard that flowed down till his waist. He had a mustache that was so long that he used to pull it up over both the sides of his face and tie into his hair. Varthma, who was an early 16th century Italian traveller in Gujarat during Begarha's reign, records, the said Sultan has mustachios under his nose so long that he ties them over his head, as a woman would tie her tresses, and he has a white beard which reaches his girdle. Dashing, I know. No wonder women couldn't control themselves around this son of a hunk and his poisonous little snake. And this hunk had the appetite of a Hulk. Records say that he ate 14 kilos of food every day. He took a swig of poison with his meals every day, which turned his breath, sweat, spittle, semen and other stuff poisonous. Varthma, the Italian traveller, tells us, every day he eats poison. Do not, however, imagine that he fills his stomach with it. But he eats a certain quantity so that when he wishes to destroy any great personage, he makes them come in front of him, stripped and naked, and he spits on him the juice of the various fruits and leaves that he has masticated, so that because of the highly poisonous quality of spittle, the man falls dead to the ground in a space of half an hour. Not surprisingly, Begarha's sexual appetite matched his size, and he is said to have kept 4,000 women in his harem. He needed so many of them because every woman he slept with died soon after, poisoned by his deadly semen. The Sultan also has 3,000 or 4,000 women in his harem, and every night he sleeps with one, and she is found dead in the morning. Every time that he takes off his shirt, that shirt is never again touched by anyone. And so also his other garments, and every day he chooses new garments. The Sultan could consume poison daily because his father had fed him upon poison from his childhood. This portrait, bizarre though it might seem, is at least partly confirmed by Barbosa, who also visited Gujarat around this time. Barbosa writes, I have heard that he was brought up from childhood to take poison, for his father, fearing that in accordance with the usage of the country, he might be killed by that means, took this precaution against such a catastrophe. He began to make him eat of it in small doses, gradually increasing them until he could take a large quantity, whereby he became so poisonous that if a fly lighted on his hand, it swelled and died at once. And many of the women with whom he slept died from the same cause. I want us, me and you who's watching this, to take a step back here and to think of how common people, the ones near him, serving him, his servants, his nobles, his military, must have felt working for such a person. It must have been a nightmare, not just dealing with him, but being physically around him. Because however we deduce this now and apply all our modern science to the truth or the lack of it, the people around him back then genuinely believed he was poisonous. Especially when you realize that Begarha's craziness did not just stop there. he had an equally big ego. Varthama, our Italian traveler whom we met earlier, recorded, "In the morning when he rises, there come to his palace 50 elephants, on each of which a man sits astride. And the said elephants do reverence to the sultan, and they have nothing else to do. And when he eats, 50 or 60 of musical instruments play, namely trumpets, drums of several sorts, and flageolets and fifes, with many others. When the sultan eats, the said elephants again do reverence to him." Now that was the spicy part. I seduced you into the video with Begarha's poisonous rod, and now let's use our brain for a bit. Could all of this actually be true? Most of it we can easily dismiss as obvious exaggeration. Begarha did have 3 perfectly healthy sons after all, so clearly not all women died from his boinker. Secondly, most of the people who do record this were travelers, foreigners visiting India, meaning they may have had at least some motivation to write jaw-dropping stories of a faraway exotic land, so they would get more and more readers and reactions, right? But now the main question. Could Mahmud Begarha have actually consumed poison and still stayed alive? Can humans do that? Scientifically speaking, such a thing actually is possible. It is possible to create resistance in our bodies against certain kinds of poisons and eventually increase the resistance by increasing the doses gradually. We don't know what kind of poison it was that Begarha consumed, but most likely it must have been something from the bees or certain kind of plants, just like how antibiotics work. That said, this wouldn't be possible with every kind of poison. For instance, this won't work for snake venom. You can't build resistance against it. You die instantly. Now for the question of being able to kill others with your poison, is that a possibility? No. Not through the spit and not through the semen, thank God. If people of the time did truly believe these stories, and why would they not? It must have been so traumatic to work for such a guy, to even be near him. Now we can't say how true all of this actually was, despite multiple contemporary records telling us essentially the same thing. Just like today, even back then, rumors and gossips were a widely relied upon channel of news. No matter how silly they sounded, they were at least more interesting than mundane reality. And just like today, even back then, people did tend to believe easily in outlandish ideas, especially about those who were in power, because they were far removed from the common people. We do the same thing today with celebrities and politicians. Our ancestors did really go through some unimaginable stuff. Not just the words or violence level of trauma, but real actual danger to their lives. And that's why history is so cool, so fascinating. Anyway, see you another time. Ciao!